When Overwatch released, it broke the internet. But since then, its popularity has drastically declined.
The blow of the PvE not being what was promised was kind of the final straw for me.
I'm done with Overwatch.
I just don't want to play it anymore.
And even its own players hate it now. But how did this happen? How could a game that had so much potential fall so far? In order to answer that, we have to go all the way back to Overwatch 1. Even though there are many things that ultimately kill Overwatch 1, a big component and one of the first things that people noticed was the lack of content. Of course, on release, people were happy and they were loving it because, the game comes out and there's a bunch of maps and heroes to get used to. They're still having fun and it feels fresh. But after a while, they want new content, and Overwatch continuously under-delivered with content. They'd be starving us, absolutely starving us for new heroes. We'd get one like every few months, every blue moon. Don't even ask for a new map, that shit will never happen. So of course, the lack of content over time will add up and people will get bored and want new things, especially if the other parts of the game start lacking and they get tired of it. They've got nothing to make them stay. I think a perfect example of this, other than the heroes and the maps, are the repeated events. The events in the beginning were so cool because they were like Christmas themed, Halloween themed, like they were holiday themed and they were really fun. But the first time you play the event, you're like, holy fuck, this is so cool. I can play with my friends, I can get holiday themed skins. And the next year they do the same thing and you're like, all right, Blizzard, it's cool, but I don't know if I want to do it twice. And then the third year they do it again and you're like, all right, Blizzard, what the fuck? I don't want to play this again. I've already played it twice. And they keep doing it over and over and over again. It just looks lazy and people get bored. It just makes people not want to play the game anymore. Now, the content is really important because if there's no new content, people get bored. But I argue balancing and the new heroes are way more important because, especially for a game like Overwatch that is pretty competitive, if people are having fun with the competitive and it feels fresh and actually fair, then people are not going to care as much if they have no new content because they can enjoy getting better at the game. But once the balances and the heroes start getting not fun and not fair, people are going to start leaving and getting mad. And that's another reason why Overwatch died. Eventually, especially with the release of DLC heroes, it seemed like the balancing kept getting worse and worse. In the beginning of Overwatch, the balancing was pretty good. The heroes are all fresh and they have their own roles and abilities. But eventually with the DLC heroes like Moira and Brigitte, they ruined the entire game. The team just didn't really know how to balance them well, and it created either broken characters or a meta that wasn't fun or characters that just could not be played. So if your favorite character couldn't be played, you're not going to have much fun in Overwatch. And this bad balancing and DLC heroes is what led to a huge domino effect that made so many people leave the game. And that all started when they released Brig, who was a DLC hero by the way, and the reason why is because when they released Brig, they created the worst meta in all of Overwatch, the GOATS meta. And if you don't know what GOATS meta is, pretty much, usually you'll have 2 DPS, 2 healers, and 2 tanks. But with GOATS meta, it pretty much eradicated DPS. So all you had was 3 tanks and 3 supports because she was that broken. And when you did that, of course, no DPS players are having fun anymore. And the entire gameplay of GOATS was so unfun that people just left. They couldn't handle it anymore. And the reason why I call that a domino effect is because when they had the GOATS meta, because they couldn't make people play DPS anymore, they introduced role queue. And this made you have to have 2 support, 2 tanks, and 2 DPS, no matter what. And you think, yeah, that's a good thing. Now we can have balanced team comps and no more GOATS meta. It's perfect. But the thing is, we found out very quickly that some roles are more popular than other ones, which made some queue times way more. For example, if you want to play tank, yeah, nobody likes tanks, so you can get a game really fast. But if you want to play DPS, well, you're screwed because you're going to have to wait 20 minutes for a 10-minute game. So I think you can imagine that most people are not going to want to play that, and thus it is another reason why it killed the game. And in my opinion, the reason why all this stuff happened was because Blizzard is really bad, especially with Overwatch, at listening to feedback. And it's infuriating because it would feel like the entire community was like agreeing, we need to nerf Brig now. This is ridiculous. And they would be so slow to do anything if they did at all. Every balance patch would be fucking weeks or months later, and they would barely do anything. They would nerf Brig's damage by like fucking 10 points, and that's it. And that's not gonna be nearly enough So these broken characters or awful metas would never get fixed. And by the time they ever did, people had already left. So if they would actually listen to feedback, all of these problems that I'm listing, the reasons why Overwatch died, wouldn't be a thing. At this point, Overwatch is pretty much like Anakin on Mustafar after he got all of his limbs cut off. Overwatch is dead and dying, and it's begging Blizzard, please, just give me something. And Blizzard said, I know exactly what you need, Overwatch, don't worry. We'll make Overwatch 2. Unfortunately, that's how Overwatch ended. With a whimper, Blizzard decided after the release of Echo, no more updates for Overwatch, effectively killing it. There were some other things that helped Overwatch die, but they weren't really the main cause. Kind of like if you get drunk and you want to go for a swim and you drown. It wasn't the thing that killed you, but it definitely didn't help. Overwatch had an awful problem of fixing stream sniping for creators. And you may think that's not that big of a deal, but it actually is, because this made a lot of Overwatch creators stop playing Overwatch because it was not fun anymore. Which I think you can tell that with all these creators having a huge audience and they stop playing the game, it's going to make a lot of other people stop playing too, not to mention that people aren't going to find the game either. And another thing that really hurt Overwatch was during this time, a bunch of new games came out that were just way more fun. This was during the king of the free-to-play Battle Pass model after Fortnite did it in 2018, right after Overwatch came out. All these Battle Royale free-to-play games came out that had a bunch of content, and if you have to pay $60 for a game that has less content than a free-to-play game, you're not doing very good. So Fortnite, Apex, Valorant, they all came out, and people just jumped on those, and like I said, every time that Overwatch messed up and they had an awful balance update, or they didn't give content, or you had to fucking see Junkenstein's Revenge for the 5th time. That next canoe over there is looking pretty nice while Overwatch is sinking in the water over here. I mean, it just makes it so more pressure is put on Blizzard because every time Overwatch makes a mistake, people are just gonna leave to the better product. So the things that really killed Overwatch were the slow content updates, the repeated events, and lack of new things to be added into the game, the bad hero updates, the bad balances, not to mention the fact that they didn't listen to any feedback, they didn't help any creators to actually want to keep playing the game, and then the final nail in the coffin was completely stop updating the game to make a sequel. That was a death knell. I mean, there's no way you can survive a game like that. If there's anything we can learn from Overwatch's failure, it's that it doesn't matter how you start, but it matters how you finish.